Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Chris Weidenbar, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Francis Colley. We warmly welcome the family of Private Francis John Hipworth, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. I invite you all now to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Thank you. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway lands. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Francis John Hipworth. Commonly known as Frank, Francis Hipworth was born on the 30th of September 1919 to the large family of Francis, and Ivy May Hipworth of Cairns. While working in a local sawmill at the age of 15, he caught his hand in some machinery, losing some fingernails and making the local newspaper. Francis was working as a carpenter on the outbreak of war in 1939. He enlisted at Cairns in June the following year, on the day that France officially surrendered to Germany. Hipworth had a few minor disciplinary issues during his first few months of training in the Miawira Army Camp in Queensland, but settled in well after that. In early February 1941, he embarked from Sydney with reinforcements to the 2nd 9th Battalion. During the voyage, he was admitted to the ship's hospital with abdominal colic and was eventually evacuated to a British General Hospital in Bombay, India, suffering from dysentery. Hipworth joined his unit in the Middle East in March of 1941. In the first week of April, the 2nd 9th Battalion left Egypt with the rest of the 18th Brigade to reinforce Tobruk against the German advance. The battalion participated in the defence of Tobruk, being subjected to repeated ground assaults and almost constant shelling and bombing from German and Italian forces. When the battalion was relieved at the end of August, it trained in Palestine before joining the forces garrisoning Syria in late September. After returning to Palestine in early January 1942, the 2nd 9th sailed for Australia from Suez in February. New Guinea was the battalion's next battleground. In early September, it fought in the desperate defence of Milne Bay, the first major battle of the war in the Pacific in which Allied troops decisively defeated a Japanese amphibious force. In mid-December, the 18th Brigade, including the 2nd 9th Battalion and a squadron of tanks from the 2nd 6th Armoured Regiment, moved from Milne Bay to reinforce American troops of the 32nd Division at the village of Boona. By this time, Boona village had been captured, but the Japanese remained well entrenched around the airfields and the government station. The 18th Brigade's first attack was launched in the airfield area by the 2nd 9th and 2nd 10th Battalions on the morning of the 18th of December. Despite the support of the tanks, the fighting was slow and vicious, and there were many casualties. 306 men from the 18th Brigade were killed, including Private Francis Hipworth, who died during the fighting on the first day of the assault. Today, his remains lie buried in Port Moresby, Vamana War Cemetery, under the epitaph, "He gave his life for those he loved." He was 23 years old. A year after his death, various members of his family placed 4 separate notices in the Cairns Post. The notice inserted by his parents and siblings included the following lines of verse. Duty called him. He was there to do his bit and take his share. His heart was true, his spirit brave. He's resting now in a hero's grave. He followed the path of duty. He answered his country's call. He died an Australian hero, the grandest death of all. Francis Hipworth's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Francis Hipworth, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.